Um, Welcome to my channel. So it's 2019, it's a new year. And this is something that I have been wanting to do for a while actually, but I've been putting it off. Not really being confident in myself, I guess, but I wrote some goals down for myself for the new year. And this is something that I've been talking to friends about for the past 6 months or so. And it's time to put plans into action. All right, so mainly I've been thinking that I wanted to start a YouTube channel to talk about mental health because I just really feel that it's something that we don't talk about enough. So I want to share a little bit about my journey and what I go through personally and why exactly it is important for me to have this channel and to share. All right, so I'm just gonna come out and say it. My name is Tamara, and I have a mental illness. I've been diagnosed with an unspecified mood disorder. For those that don't know what that means, I Googled it for you. Unspecified mood disorder is one in which the symptoms may fall under two or more of the other types of mood disorders. While the exact causes aren't known, this mood disorder is thought to be connected to a chemical imbalance in the brain. Excuse my squinting, I can't find my reading glasses. So, so how did I get there? I'll try like a really quick rundown of how I got there. There's just so much, and I hope to be able to, I will be able to slowly tackle things one at a time in the future. But I want to try to keep all my videos between 10 and 15 minutes. So here I go. It all started in November of 2014. I had just started a new job and I was training, and they had a very strict you can't miss any days of work policy. They had a very strict you can't miss any days of work policy. So my son at the time was in first grade, and I had been having some behavioral issues with him, and I was handling everything the best of my ability, but I'm a first-time mom, so a lot of things I just don't understand. Anyways, a relative was helping me out with him. My son got suspended from school, and that relative had to pick my son up and kept him because I had just started this new training, and also I was moving. I was downsizing from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom. So this relative was really helping me out a lot. Well, the next day, my son gets kicked out of school again for the same reason. I know there's so many issues like what was going on. You know, he was in first grade. Why is a first grader being sent home from school? Those are whole other issues. But that relative spanked my son for his behavior at school, which snowballed into him going to school the next day, getting into trouble again, and telling the school, please don't call that relative. That person will spank me, and I don't like spankings. He didn't have any broken bones, no bleeding, nothing like that. But he did tell the school that he was spanked over 100 times, which is not true, but that's what he said. And when they called me, and I should have lied, knowing what I know now, I should have lied. But they were like, do you guys spank kids? And I was like, well, yeah, if they misbehave, they get a spanking. And because of that, CPS took my son. And he was out of the home, I think, for about November, December, January, February, March, April, May. About 6 months, I think he was out of my home. And then he was staying with relatives, and that's a whole nother issue. But that whole situation just did something to me. I actually did really well avoiding the situation while it was going on. I went to work regularly. I was actually working a full-time job and a part-time job and working overtime at the full-time job because as long as I was not home, I didn't have to think about the fact that my child was not there. But end result, he came home. The charges were dropped. The court dismissed the case and they just sent him home, and literally said like, "You're a good mom. You've always been a good mom. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to see." So that's what happened. And I still have to this day, when I think about it, I get so angry inside. And I mean, I have nightmares about it. I'm terrified. Literally everything that I do as a mother now, everything I do, in the back of my head, is someone going to call CPS? If someone were to call CPS, what would they say? And it's not even anything major, but let's say he doesn't want to eat dinner. And it's like, well, you need to eat what I give to you, or you can have an option of a other item. And he's like, I don't want either of those. I want peanut butter and jelly. Well, no, you need to eat these things given to you. Well, then I'm choosing not to eat dinner. Well, then I have to think like, is that okay? Is it okay for him to choose not to eat dinner? Or if someone tells CPS, they're gonna tell me I'm a bad mom because he didn't want to eat the chicken and green beans and mashed potatoes and cornbread and whatever else that I put in front of him, because he would rather eat peanut butter and jelly, and I'm trying to encourage him to eat healthier choices. But then part of that might be the anxiety. So anyways, that whole situation was going on, and I did not deal with it. It just happened, and it was so traumatic. I had to pretend like I was someone else. So that whole 6 to 9 months that I was in that situation, because there was still court, I got physical custody back, but I did not have legal custody. So I didn't have any decision-making rights with my child until the court case got dismissed, which I don't remember the date, but I think it was a total of 9 months I was going through that situation. And I never dealt with the situation. I just went through the motions, and he came home, and it was like, he's home now, it's in the past, everything is over. But everything was not over. I was also in a relationship at that time with someone that had his own struggles that he was going through. And he was a great support to me during that time. That's probably the hardest thing that I've ever gone through in my life. And he was a great support to me during that time, but he just had his own struggles that did not go well with mine. And that all came about a year after I got my son back. We moved to a new area, things are going okay, but that was when I started to break down. Like, I was crying. I didn't know I was crying. I was sad. I was picking fights with my partner. It was just really bad for me, and I could not articulate to him what was going on. And he had his own struggles that he couldn't really babysit me. Like, I did need a babysitter at that time. I kind of need a babysitter right now today, but he just wasn't able to do that, and that's fine. He's not saying anything bad about him. Our relationship was great for what it was, and I mean, it just isn't anymore, and that's just life. Well, so how did I learn that I had like these things going on? Okay, well, there was one day specifically, I was just having a really hard time at work. I had a manager who was just a total hard ass. So, I mean, that made other issues, because work is something that I've always been good at, because I'm a hard worker. I'm a perfectionist. I like to do things well. I like to try my best. And I had a manager who was, I've heard of managers like this, never had one of my own that was this way. But this manager was kind of, nothing you do is ever good enough. And that wasn't my issue. I know that today. That was not my issue. That was her thing. But I didn't know this at that time. So for her, it was like, nothing you do is good enough. You literally suck at everything. I'm unhappy with your performance all around, and you need to do better. And yeah, that's how that manager was. And so I had that issue. I had my son and his behaviors. I had just learned that he was autistic. There was an issue. I had to admit him to children's behavioral health, and they kept him for about a week. And then they told me, hey, this is why you've been having all these issues with him his whole life. He's on the spectrum. He's a typical child on the surface, but socially and emotionally, he's struggling, and he needs additional support. So I learned that. And I was having a hard time accepting that diagnosis. I was having a hard time learning how to handle him, learning how to interact with him, learning how to speak his language. So I was struggling with that. So I had work, I had my son. Financially, things weren't going well. My partner was having a hard time keeping employment. And so all that stress was on me to maintain the household. And then, I mean, I had my partner, and he was having some issues. I'm not going to put his business out there, but he, like I said, he had some struggles of his own. And this day in particular is what changed everything. So this day I was driving him to the bus because we only had one car, and my son Tristan was in the back seat blowing bubbles that he had got at some party we went to, and he asked permission, may I blow the bubbles? My partner didn't say anything. I said, sure, go ahead, blow your bubbles. So he's in the back seat, kid blowing bubbles, and one of the bubbles, like bubbles do, can't control them, floated to the front of the car and hit my partner right here on the side of his face. And instead of saying something along the lines of, okay, don't blow the bubbles anymore, or let me roll the windows down, or, you know, blow it out the window, he just starts screaming, and he's like, why would you blow a bubble in my eye? And I'm just like, he did not intentionally blow this bubble in your eye, but that escalated way higher than it needed to. Like, I mean, I'm just giving you just like a brief, you know, a slow rundown of what was going on, but that situation escalated to screaming, both of us screaming at the top of our lungs, me pulling over on the side of the road and tell him to get out and walk the rest of the way to the bus. Should not happen from a kid blowing bubbles. So I had to go to work, and I mean, we have been having several days like that of us just clashing and these screaming battles. So I was exhausted, and then I still had my son's issues, and that was the first time that we ever screamed in front of him. I don't believe in fighting in front of children, but it got to that point because I felt that he was not treating my son fairly, and that's just not something that I will always protect my son. So I go to work, and I deal with my regular manager who just hates everything I do, and I suck at absolutely every part of my job, which I should have known that that wasn't the case, because never in my life had I ever, I've always been told by managers, you are the model employee. I wish my other employees were like you. I wish that I would have had enough confidence to know that it wasn't my issue, it was her, but I didn't. I was already feeling low. So I go into work that day, and I did make a mistake at work. I made a mistake. I was working in mortgages at the time, and there was something called title. I was supposed to have a title request approved. I sent a file through to underwriting. I just knew it was going to come back clean, and there was an issue with a private road that I just totally overlooked. And I ended up having to tell this family that they were not closing on the day they were closing. They were supposed to close. They would have to close the next day. So I was very upset with myself. I mean, people, they have utilities scheduled to get cut on. They have moving trucks scheduled to arrive. And I mean, it was a mistake. And my manager let me know I made a mistake. And so I went home with that. And so I get off of work, and I'm going to meet my partner to pick him up from the bus stop. And he's like, okay, I'm going to be here. I just have so many things on my mind. He told me a place to meet him at, but I was thinking of the usual place to pick him up. So I go to Albertsons grocery store, and I'm waiting in the parking lot, and then I don't see him. He calls me. He's like, I'm getting off now. I'm like, okay, I'll be looking out for you. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking, and then he calls again. He's like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm here. He's like, that's not where I told you to go. I told you to go. And I'm just like, damn, like, I'm just fucking up all over. And I mean, that day, I think Tristan even had a good day at school, but I was just feeling like such a fuck up all around every other way. I didn't even notice. So anyways, I pick him up. We get back to our apartment. And the dog then got into the trash. Trash is all over the entire apartment. And I forgot to take food out of the freezer for dinner. And then I'm talking to him about maybe ordering food for dinner. And then we're talking about other bills that are coming due. And then that escalated. So he left. And I'm just not ready to really get into the details of everything. But that turned into me taking some medicine and me going to the hospital for it. So I got admitted into a behavioral health hospital, and I was there for, I want to say like 9 or 10 days or something. And that's how I got my diagnosis. That's how I learned that I have major depression and anxiety. Now, I'm going to make more videos about my time inpatient. Maybe one day I'll be able to go more into detail about what happened that day. It's just another one of those situations that I have not really dealt with. So I don't really think about that much. So I will definitely talk more about my experience being inpatient and things I've done since then. But one thing that I definitely learned, let me back up. So after getting out of the hospital, they don't just release you and say, okay, you did 10 days, you're good now, you can go home. It doesn't work like that. They had my partner, he had to come up to the hospital. We had to all sit down together. We had to talk about a safety plan. He signed paperwork about things that he was going to look for, that he was going to call them if certain things were to happen to me. And yeah, so that's how I went home. Plus, I had to agree to do an intensive outpatient therapy. So I did IOP, and that was the beginning of me learning how to overcome a mental illness. Now, there's no cure. I'm always gonna have bad moments. I'm always gonna have bad days. But every single day, I'm learning more about how to move forward. How can I manage this situation? And I think that the biggest thing for me was just accepting that it is what it is. Like, my brain just does not think the same as other people. One bad thing can happen and that can snowball. It could be something as small as, I mean, I've been video recording myself for some time now, so I'll share some of those videos about bad days. But I remember literally one day, so I have a new boyfriend, and his name is Donald. And one day I had baked some chicken for dinner, and he was coming over to have dinner with me, and he asked, what did you make for dinner? And I said, I baked some chicken. And he's like, oh, I don't like baked chicken that much. And then I just got so in my feelings, like, oh, I'm an idiot, I should have asked. And like, we got back to my apartment, and I go in the room and I'm crying and I'm just feeling like a loser. Like, that's literally how my brain works. So I cannot always stop these feelings from occurring. I cannot always prevent the emotion, but what I can do is, when the emotion is over, is to write about it or to video myself, and then to process that situation. And in processing, that helps me to not allow it to go any further. So why is this so important to me? It's important to me because since I've been going through this whole journey of mental health, I have been speaking to so many people that have experienced something similar to me. Not everybody, of course, not everyone has a mental illness, but a lot of people do, and they don't talk about it, or they're ashamed, they're embarrassed, they feel like something is wrong with them. And I just want to encourage a conversation about mental health. That's it. I don't want to diagnose anyone. I don't want anyone to start thinking like, oh, well, maybe I have that too. But I just want to start a conversation about being healthy mentally. There's so much talk about physical health, about nutrition, about surrounding yourself with positive people, and all of that is important too. I do believe that the mind, body, and soul is all connected. So yes, that's all important too. But why is it that we all know, for example, how often are you supposed to exercise to be healthy? Oh, 30 minutes a day. We all know that. There's a lot of people that live by that. They exercise 30 minutes a day. Me personally, I'm trying to get there. I'm working on it. But how often do you need to exercise your mind? You should be exercising your mind for at least 15 minutes a day, whether that's by positive thinking, positive affirmations, meditating. But how many of us are actually doing that? Mental health is intentional. It doesn't just come. It's not like you just go every day and it's like, I'm gonna have a good day today. I'm gonna be mentally healthy today. Or you don't even think about it. You just wake up and you just go. But that's part of the problem. There's not enough talk about mental health. There's not enough talk about what we need to do. So 2019 is a new year for me, and I'm trying to start this year off on a positive note. And I want to just really work on developing myself. So I'm going to be making these videos hopefully weekly. I started journaling, and I just want to share my experiences and things that I'm going to work on. So right now, my current goal is to stick with starting at that 15 minutes of mindfulness every single day, starting my morning off by just being positive, whether it's by meditating, writing some positive affirmations, just something that's going to get myself in the thought process of thinking positively, positively, thinking of getting myself positively. And I just want to share that. I just want to encourage a conversation. I want everyone to be happy. I want everyone to be healthy. I have a really, really close friend of mine that just went inpatient recently. And I feel like I'm glad that she went and she got the help that she needed. But I really feel like if there was more conversations about mental health, she wouldn't have gotten to that point. I know she would not have gotten to that point. And that's it. I feel like we all have a purpose in life. And I know that my purpose is to make a change in someone else's life for the better. And even if I only get one person to watch my videos, if I can make a difference in that one person's life, then I will have done what I've been sent here to do. So I hope you enjoyed watching. I hope that I share some useful information. If you have questions, anything specific that you want me to talk about in my video next week, let me know. I mean, I really just want to try my best to be transparent. I want to explore all areas of mental health. So thank you for watching. Again, I may have a mental illness, but I am not my mental illness. It does not define me. It's about what I do and how I overcome. So be cool. I'll see y'all later.